Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Great. All right. How's everybody doing? How's your weekend? I imagine good. Let's see. All right. Let's give everybody a couple of minutes to join. All right. Okay. All right. All right. Welcome back. Let's see. This text thing is annoying. It just gets in the way. All right. Welcome back. Let's see. Where are we? Where have you been? Where have we been and where are we going? Okay, welcome back, everybody. We are entering the I guess second week number 2 of web development. Really, we've had week 0, where we had our first lecture, and we talked about how to install several software. We set up a development environment, installed Node.js, React.js, created a Hello World React application, and then deployed it to Netlify. And then last week we spent talking about HTML, how to create content, looking at some of the basic layout elements of headings and paragraphs and lists and tables, things that will allow you to create most content on the web. We also went over the project and looked through the requirements, and I demonstrated how to get started. We talked about that you need to identify a third-party API that provides some free data that you should be able to build an application around that. I demonstrated with a OMDB that provides data about movies and TV shows, and I created just some placeholders for the various web pages that are required for the project. So moving on, this week we are going to introduce another topic called CSS, or cascading style sheets, which is going to allow us to style the content that we have been creating so far. Right now, if you have noticed, the content is fairly ugly and uninteresting. It uses a particular font, which is a Times New Roman. That is the default font that browsers use unless you override them. And so today we're going to talk about how do we override that ugly look and feel, and start making it look a little bit more professional, a little more presentable. We're going to talk about the the principles and the technology and some of the techniques. The screens, our pages are still not going to look very, very pretty. It's not easy if you don't have a artistic eye and you haven't done this for a while to make pages look compelling. Instead, usually what we do is we rely on other folks who have created some standard look and feel, some standard libraries, and we just plug them into our web pages to make them look pretty. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week when we talk about Bootstrap. Okay, Bootstrap is a CSS library that would allow you to very easily add professional looking content to the screen. But before we do that, we need to learn how it works, why it works, right? And what's the impetus and some of the techniques and some of the basic stuff, right? How to read that. So yeah, so this week we're gonna spend all our time playing around with CSS. Also, we'll give you a chance to continue practicing HTML while you become familiar with that. Also, today we're going to introduce the third assignment number 3, which is all about CSS. Next week will be the first quiz, Q1. What I'm thinking is that the quiz will be made available at some point during the day, the first lecture, and will be available for 24 hours for you to take the quiz. So yeah, that's all next week. Let's talk about the content this week. Any questions before we get started? Let's see. I did send the link to the lecture. Wonder if some folks are not able to come in. All right. Is the quiz online? Yes, it is. It is remote and online on Canvas. On Canvas, basically there will be a section on the left that says quizzes, and the quizzes will be available there. Obviously, they're available a particular time of day for some hours, and then they become unavailable. So be sure to put aside 20, 30 minutes for the quiz. They are timed, and so make sure you're in an area where you can concentrate and complete the quiz in one sitting. Usually the questions anywhere between 5 and 10 questions, and maybe 3 points each. Most of them are fill in the blanks or multiple choice, and it will give you a grade at the end of the quiz. All right, let's go on. Yeah, so CSS. Let me just talk about. Do we have time limited? Yeah, the time is limited. Usually the quizzes are anywhere between 20 and 30 minutes. And the timer starts when you start the quiz. All right, so let's talk about CSS. Okay, so CSS, it's a stands for cascading style sheets, right? And the intent is that it's going to allow us to style the look and feel of our pages or web pages. Right now, the pages that we're looking at are styled using the default style of the browser. So let's see what we got so far. Let me start the application. So npm start. Says, how many questions will be on the quiz? About 5 to 10 questions, and they're about 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, so here's the assignments. And so right now, the style that you see here, this is the default style that the browser provides. which stipulates the size of this heading 1, the size of heading 2, what fonts to use, what foreground color, what background color to use, and how much space is there between the edge of the window and the beginning of the text. It says how much space is between these headings. All that is stipulated by the style sheet, right? And you can take a look at the style by inspecting, right? If you look at inspector, and let's put this side by side. We're going to put it on the right-hand side, like that. If you remember, the inspector allows you to see behind the scenes what the source code looks like that generated this page, right? Last lecture, talking about all these nodes. So this is the DOM, or the document object model, that you have all these nodes. For instance, this is the body, which is the entire thing, right? And then you have H1 with the heading. Notice that it highlights, and there's heading 2 that highlights it. Here's a text. Here's a paragraph. Okay, so notice that on the left-hand side, there's this highlights that come up, that pop up. See the blue and the orange? See that when I highlight this? See the blue and orange, blue and orange. What is that? So what that is that it's telling us that there are some configurations of how much that space is. Somebody configured what that space is, right? The white spaces in between. And you can take a look at that down here, right? If you make this bigger a little bit at the bottom, notice there's a tab called styles. Right? So elements allows you to see the DOM, right? The content. This is the actual content. But then down below, styles tells you that each of these nodes has a style associated. Right? So for instance, if I click on this, notice that it's the tag is H1. See that? Oh, so down below, notice that it says H1 as well. So this H1 down here is referring to this H1 over here. It says that all H1s, basically this is what it says. All H1s have the following styles, right? That the font size is 2EM, meaning twice as big as the normal size, right? Let's see, what's the question? What does 067 EM? Yeah, so it means that it's 67%, right? So this is 200%. So this is twice as big as the, so there's relative size, right? So EM or M is you say that this is a relative size of what it would normally be. All right. So for instance, this paragraph. Let's look at the paragraph. Notice that the paragraph says that the size initially is one M, right? Whereas H2 is twice as much. Actually, no, this H2 is 1.5. See that? Right, and H3 is 1.17. So the fonts get smaller and smaller, right, of what the normal might be. Okay, so 1M means it's 100%, meaning is 100% of whatever the original or whatever the base or default size for that attribute. Now, these over here, these are attributes that we can modify, right, to change the style and look and feel of H3. So for instance, if I go back to H1, it says that the font size is 2EM. For instance, we can modify it. We can say, oh, actually, no, this is the user agent style sheet. So this is the style sheet that the browser is providing, right? And it's not letting us edit it. Okay. But notice that at the top, you have some brackets here that are empty that can allow you to edit, right, the style and look and feel, right? And so, and then what we do is we modify some of these properties and we change it, right? So we might notice if I highlight this, right, I could say that the foreground, right, for this H1, notice that I'm right now I'm configuring only this one node, okay? And I can say certain things. I can say that the foreground color, which is just color, the attribute color configures the foreground color, right, of the text. I can say that it's red. And notice that indeed now my text is indeed red. See that? Okay. I can say that the background color, right, is yellow. See that? Okay. Um, I can now, if somebody has already established certain attributes, like for instance, that the font size is 2EM, right? I can override that. I can say, well, I know that the browser says that you should be 2EM, but I'm actually gonna font size. I'm gonna say 3EM. Be 3 times as big, and I can make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And so it just doesn't fit in the text in the screen, right? Uh, okay. Also notice that the browser is highlighting the fact that H1 was originally by default configured to be 2EM, and now it's scratching it. It says this has been overwritten. Somebody's overriding it, right? And there, indeed, yes, I am overriding it. This is a question. What is the overriding hierarchy? Which has more priority? Yeah, we'll talk about all that. There's a certain rules on how things apply, but in general, last one wins. That's the general rule of thumb, is that the last one overrides anyone before, right? But things could get a little bit hairy, and it can't be just that clear cut. Okay. All right. So notice that if I refresh the screen, right? If I refresh the screen, all my styles go away, right? Because I have been basically making changes to the temporary, right, memory of the browser, right? This is what this here on the right hand side here is what we're looking at the brain of the memory of the browser. This is what the browser has in its mind, and this is what it is drawing based on its representation over here. Okay, and I can change its mind on the fly. I can make changes, but these are not permanent, right? I am changing the transient memory of the browser. If I refresh, right, the original text comes back. To make changes permanent, right, I need to actually write code, right, that lives on the file that will be read, right, and then the browser will read this text, right, and actually make the changes. Make sense? All right, so uh, let's talk about how that works. Okay, so I'm going to in a terminal, I'm going to change this to a separate branch, right? Because I don't want to break my previous branch. And in the assignment, we do ask you to work in a new branch, right? Right now, we are in branch A2. Okay, and I don't think get status. Okay, I haven't made any changes, right? So I'm going to say git checkout -b A3, just A3. Okay, so now I'm in branch A3, so I'm not going to touch anything in A2. If that assignment is still being edited or is being graded, I don't want to trample over it, so I'm creating a brand new branch off of A2, right? Meaning I am inheriting everything that I had done for A2, and I'm going to add more stuff. Okay? So let's see. So for A2, the text that I'm looking at, right, is this right here, index.html. It's this one, A2 index.html. See that right there? So I can make changes here, right? So I can make changes to this text. So if I say 1, 2, 3, 4, right? My changes should take effect. There it is, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the text that is being rendered there, right? And just to go over real quick, right? This is just a plain old HTML document, right? Notice it has basically a root HTML tag that contains 2 tags, right? One called the head tag and the other one the body tag. We said that the head was mostly for meta information, right? Let's see, there's a question in the chat. Do we need to create a new branch set with branch A2 for A2 Twitter part? Yes, we always work on the latest branch, A3, A4, and so on and so forth. Yes, correct. Even for the Twitter part. Yep. So for the body contains the main content. In this case, headers and paragraphs and whatnot. Okay. All right. So how do I make changes permanent? Right. So for instance, if I want to change the color, I had tried it out and I said, oh well, the color is red. I like that red. Okay, and the foreground and the background color is yellow. So how can I make that change permanent? Well, I can. What this is doing, it is, notice that what it's doing. See that ch1? It is editing a style attribute, right on the h1 tag. See that? It's saying that style equals quote color red, background color yellow, blah blah blah, and close quote. See that? Right? So that's really what's happening, right? And so I can copy this. I can copy this style. I just copy the whole thing, right? And I can just paste it right here, right? Paste it. Okay. Maybe put it all in a single line. There we go. And here's my HTML. Okay. Let's see what that does. Now, if I refresh the screen, now my changes are permanent. My changes are permanent. See that? If I refresh the screen, that style is not temporary, right? I have made it permanent here, right? I can use an attribute. So header elements, all elements, well, most elements have attributes that you can configure, right? That are specific. Well, some of them are general and available to all elements, right? But some attributes are specific to a specific element, right? So the style attribute is available in all elements. And what it basically does is that lets you configure the look and feel about that specific element, right? You can change the color, you can change the background, and the language. This language right here is not HTML, right? It's its own language. It's a very sophisticated language, right? It's called CSS, Cascading Style Sheets, right? And basically it entails many name value pairs, right? Lots of name value pairs where here's the name, here's the value, here's the name, and here's the value. And learning about CSS is all about learning all these different attributes, what the different values that you could take. Plus, there's some rules, elements that contain other elements, right? The hierarchy of the element, also the priority. If you have multiple rules that might collide with one another, which one wins? We'll talk about that in a minute, right? So let's keep going. Let's see if I can make other changes, right? So for instance, I can say font size. I can say 5 EM, right? So that's going to be 5 times the normal size. So I'm going to say refresh. There it is. It's huge. It's humongous. Everybody good? Okay. All right. So, So in general, it is considered bad practice. Right? In general, it is considered to be bad practice to change the style to an individual element like this, right? Sure, I mean, in academia, if you're just playing around and learning about it like we're doing right here, it's totally fine. We're learning the fact that you can modify the look and feel of an individual element using the style attribute. Yes, we learned that. But it's considered bad practice. Okay? And we'll talk about why it's bad practice in a minute. So a slightly better solution is to instead, right, not do it here at the element itself, right? Instead, it's better practice is to create a dedicated style tag, right? Not an attribute. This is an attribute. This is a style attribute. This is a style tag. And then move these rules, move these transformations, right? Move them over from here, copy them, and put them in here. But something's missing, right? Notice that the style I've put all these name value pairs. I need to be able to say, well, to which element are you applying this to? Right? All of them? All the elements? All the elements should be foreground red, background yellow, and font size 5? Maybe that's not what we mean. We need to give it a context, right? We need to tell it, where does this transformation apply? And the way we do that is we put it in curly brackets. Put it in curly brackets. Okay. And we say, on the left side, right, of the curly bracket, we say, which elements does this apply to? Right. So for instance, we might say H1. Okay. And H1, now H1, I can remove from here this H1. I can say gone. Right, if I go back and I refresh, this still works, right? It's H1. Okay, but notice that no longer has it been applied to the H1, right? It's no longer applied to the individual element. Instead, there's an overall rule that says wherever you see an H1, apply the following transformations. Make the font 5, color red, and yellow, foreground yellow. Now, I don't remember if we had any more H1s. I guess not. We don't have any more H1s. Now, notice that if I could apply the rules to H2. Now, it's going to apply to the H2 element. So which one that is? It's this one right here. But not only that one, it also applies to this H2. It applies to all H2s. Okay, so if I refresh, notice that now this H2 now has a foreground red, background yellow, right? And the font is huge. And there's another H2. See that? All H2s now look the same way. Everybody good? Make sense? Okay. Now I had said that styling directly on the element was a bad idea, right? It's frowned upon. It's frowned upon. And here's one of the reasons is that I can come here at heading tags, right? And I can say I can put my style again and say that the color, it's actually green, right? And now notice that indeed it is green, right? I have overwritten my global style only on that heading, right? But notice that all the other headings are okay. Red on yellow, red on yellow, red on yellow, except this one. Okay. And so the problem with adding this style right on the element is that I have no way to override that from out here, right? I would need to go to that specific element. If I want to change something, I need to go to that specific element and then change it on that element, right? As opposed to this one's much more powerful. It allows me to take all H2s, right, and give it a consistent look and feel to all my H2s, right? So this gives me a centralized control over the entire document where I can dispense styles. Okay, by using styles on the element, there's no way for me to override it, right? And you're forcing me to go in and edit that specific element right there, right? So in general, we frown upon using the style attribute, right? Since it makes it hard for developers to maintain, a large number of elements and screens all at once. Okay, we prefer to have a centralized place where we can administer the style for all the screens. Make sense? Okay. Everybody still with me? Everybody okay? All right. Okay. So yeah. So in general, we can change styles using the attribute. We can use the style, change style using the dedicated style tag, or even better, um, the preferred way of doing it is to not even have it in the document itself, right? Instead, best practice is to move all this styling and move it over to a separate file, right? So for instance, you might have in A2, you might have a style sheet and call it index CSS like that, right? And we always want to add it to the index to GitHub, okay? And now what we're going to do is that we're going to cut this from here, and we're going to move it over to index. We're going to move it over to index. Notice that I have removed it from the HTML document. See that? So if I go back, just temporarily, notice that this goes back to the original style because I have removed that style from that CSS rule from the HTML document, right? So everything goes back to what it was, right? And instead of living in this style tag, we're going to remove that, and instead we moved it to index.css. Okay, but now it's a separate file, right? So we need to be able to bring that file in, right, to say, I want those rules to apply to my document, right? So in index, I can bring in and read that document and create a dependency and say that this HTML document depends on that other CSS document, right? And the way we do that is through the tag link, right? We say that the source or href to the document is this index file. There it is. Now, there's many different types of dependencies, right? The style sheets just being one of them, right? So we need to specify in the link, we need to specify what type of dependencies is. Notice that if I just do that and I go back, right, and I refresh, notice that it's not going to do anything, right? It's not working. The link is there, right? The link is there. It's just it just doesn't know what to do with it. Doesn't know how to interpret it, right? So we have to go a little further and say that the relationship, right, is that this is a style sheet, right? You should interpret this file as a style sheet. Now, if I refresh, notice that indeed my style works again. Make sense? All right. All right. So very good. So this is the best practice. The best practice is that you separate these two documents. One is HTML that declares what the content is. So it declares what the content is. Also, it declares the role of each one of the elements, right? There's a big heading, right, introducing the overarching theme of the document, right? And then H2, it's a subheading, right? So it's just organizing the document, right? There's a paragraph and whatnot. Yes. So HTML determines what to display, whereas the index, right, it's in a separate. The CSS file is in a separate file, right? All the contents. This specifies how it should render that, right? Using what styles, what colors, what foreground, okay, what fonts, right? So one specifies the what, the other one specifies the how. Everybody good? Okay. Okay. So now notice that this says, right, it's using this H2 is using what? It's using the name of the tag, right? It's referring to all the tags whose names is H2, correct? All right, which is this one, it's several of them, okay? Now there's several other ways of referring, right, from CSS and referring to other elements in the document, okay? One one of the easiest one is to refer to the elements by their name. Okay. Another way that is to be able to refer to them by their unique identifier. Okay, so if so I have this H2 and there's another H2 here. I can distinguish these two, right, by saying right now I can't distinguish them, right, because they have the same name. There's no distinction. But I could give it a unique identifier, and I can say that this is the list tag. Okay, I can give it that unique identifier. Right. Now I can distinguish the two H2s. I can say, oh, well, I want all H2s to look one way, but this particular H2 with this particular ID, I might want to do something different. Okay, so what I can do is I can say H2, but with the hash. Okay, so hash means that it's ID, right? That list tag is an ID, a unique identifier, right? So it is the H2 whose ID is list tag, right? Now I'm saying something specific about that one tag, okay? And in this one, I might say that I want the color to be white, right? But instead, the background to be blue. Okay. Now, if I refresh, there's my list tag. Notice that the list tag, if I highlight it over here, I can say inspect. It brings me to that H2 whose ID is list tag. Notice that there's several things that are happening here, right? Okay. Notice that the H2 has been overwritten, right? And its colors don't apply anymore. Instead, it applies these color white and background blue. Let's take a look at what happens if I move this around and I change the order and I refresh. Notice that it doesn't change the fact. Right? It doesn't change the fact. So in this case, it's not taking the order of declaration. Instead, it's saying that the uniqueness overrides, right, the general. If you're more unique, right, if you're more specific, then that has a higher weight, right, on things that are more general. So for instance, this H2 applies to any number of headings, right? Whereas this one with the hash refers to an individual heading. You see that? So this one is overriding this one over here. Okay. So for instance, we are taking the fonts declared in H2, right? Notice that we don't override it in H2 list tag, but we are overriding these two attributes, the color and the background, but we're leaving around the font size. We're also leaving around some other stuff, right, that is declared by the browser. The browser, for instance, notice I had declared the font to be 1.5, but we are overriding by 5M. Now, the reason this works is that that's because of the order, right? If you have two rules that are identical, like this H2 and this H2, right? They are identical rules, right? One is not more specific than the other, okay? But ours gets loaded after than the browser's rule. Right, so we are the browser's H2 rule gets loaded before ours, right? So we override previous declarations, right? That's why ours takes precedence over this H2. Whereas this one is because of specificity, right? So specificity trumps generality. Everybody good? Okay. Okay. Let's keep going. I can also specify. Oh, one more thing. Now, these this expression here is a combination of two things, right? It's a combination of the name. It's a combination of the ID. Okay, which you concatenate. You're saying it's the element that has the element name h2 and has the ID list tag. Okay, now list tag is an ID, right? And by definition, IDs are unique, right? So you can't get more unique than that, right? The ID is enforced to be unique within this document. So if you're giving me the ID, the fact that you're giving me also H2 doesn't make us any more unique, right? Because the ID is already as unique as you can get. So optionally, you can just remove H2, right? It's not needed. Are you saying just the elements, an element, I don't know its name, whose ID is list tag, right? So in this case, if you refresh, notice that the rule still applies, works well, same way as before. Okay. All right. So let's keep going. So we can also select elements by their by groupings, right? We can group elements, right, that have the same value, same value. Let me show you. We can declare styles here, right, on the in the style sheet, right, that can then be used to paint whatever we want to paint on our screen. So for instance, we can say, I want to declare a foreground, right, a red, right, a red foreground. Okay, so I just made up that name, right? I just made that up. It's a unique identifier. You can name these whatever you want. And notice that it has a dot in front of it, right? That means that you will be able to apply these transformations to anyone who you want to apply it to, right? So for instance, I'm going to say this is color red. Okay. I guess let's use another color. It says FG blue. How's that? Blue. And the color is blue. Okay. So now I can take this and apply this styling to anyone I want, regardless of the name of the attribute, regardless of their ID, right? So let's try it out. So we can go to the HTML and let's see. Let's paint this H1 blue. Blue. We can say we can apply that transformation, this color blue, FG blue. How do we do that? Well, we don't just say FG blue. That doesn't work, right? It's not the style attribute either. It's not style attribute. Nope, that doesn't work. Instead, what we do is that we apply a brand new attribute called the class. The class, right? Basically, that is saying that this element is kind of like of type FG blue, right? That has declared its foreground color to be blue. Right? So if we go back and refresh, notice that indeed it is blue. See that? And this can be applied to anybody, right? Anybody can any element that uses the class and FG blue, we can apply that styling. So for instance, let's apply it to this paragraph, right? under the paragraphs graph, what color is it right now? Okay, now there's nothing, right? It's has nothing special, right? So we can say class FG blue. Let's refresh. There it is. Notice that it's blue, right? To make it more dramatic, let's change this to be color blue, but also the background color will make it yellow. Right, so if I refresh, okay, there it is, right? It's got background is yellow, foreground is blue. Let's try some more. What about these lists? Okay, how about that? Let's go back. Where are these lists? So for instance, I can apply it to an individual list right here, right? I can say the FG blue, right? Style of being foreground blue and background yellow. I'm applying it to that one line item. Okay. So if I go back and refresh, indeed, that's exactly what's happening, right? Foreground blue, background yellow. Or I can apply it to an entire list of items, right? On my list of books, right? So if I refresh, indeed, right, the entire list is foreground blue and background yellow. That makes sense? Everybody good? Okay, so that's the basic gist, right? It's the being able to associate, right, the look and feel declared in style sheets and then apply them, right, to elements declared in the HTML document. Make sense? And depends how general you want to be. H2 is fairly general, meaning all elements of whose name is H2. Now the class, these class attributes are a little bit more specific, since H2 applies to every H2. FG, well, not all elements are going to have this class, right? You might have multiple H2s that have the class. You might have several H2 that don't have the class, right? So classes are a little more specific, right, to the names. So they have a little more specificity. They have a higher priority, right? And then you have the king of priorities, right? The ID that allows you to uniquely identify this particular node, right, and apply this style. Okay, so depending how you want to be. Make sense? Okay. All right. So now, how about that you can also be more specific about depending on the relationship between elements. Okay. So for instance, you might say that I want to apply elements to that have a specific relationship with their parent. Okay. So you might say, well, I want to change the line items, right, that are under these lists. Okay. So for instance, you might say under the ULs, there is a line item that I want to do something with it, right? So this this greater than says that there is a relationship. There's a parent-child relationship between these two elements. So there's an element, UL. Let's see, there it is, UL, who has a child. There it is, a whole bunch of children. Okay, so now I want to specify not only its ID by class, by name, but also by relationship between the parent and child, right? And it allows you to, basically what I want to try and do, what this allows you to do is to navigate the DOM, right? It allows you to navigate this tree. So this tree, starting here at the body, you want to be able to navigate it. Obviously, we can navigate it here with our arrow keys, right? We go from one node to the next. Well, I want to be able to do that also programmatically. I want to be able to say, hey, go look up, this particular node, right, on the DOM tree. I want to make it green. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, this is how you do it. Right? You can establish relationship, right? So you can create hierarchies. You have a UL that has a child LI, and that I want to make its background color green. Right? Notice that indeed I make the ULs green. Okay. Now, green background color. Okay. How about foreground color? Color. Right now it says blue, but how about white? White. Okay. And you might say, wait a minute. Didn't you say FG blue? Right? You said that the whole thing is blue that has background yellow and color blue. Why isn't that showing anymore? Well, because I made a rule that is a little more specific. I'm saying this doesn't apply to all LIs, right? It applies to an LI that lives under UL, right? So parent-child relationship is a very strong, uniqueness, right? That you're going through a particular path, right, and going to a particular leaf in the tree that you want to paint, you want to style. Okay, so yeah, so there we go. You create styles. Anyway, I think we know enough to be dangerous. Let's take a look at the assignment and what it asks you to do. All right, so let's take a look at the assignment. So the assignment asks you first to create a branch, A3, which we did. And under there, you are asked to create a directory called A3. And under there, I believe you're asked to create an index file. And then just do all your work in there. Okay. All right. So one thing, I'd like to ask you that you use the source code that is here, right, verbatim. Okay. Since we are automating some of our grades, and so we're going to be comparing the content that you put in there with content that we're expecting. You can add more content, right? But you should have at least the content that we're asking for, right? We're going to be writing a couple of scripts, right? That are going to be looking at your documents for anything that is missing, right? And if you misspell it, whatnot, right? It's not going to find it. So I suggest you copy and paste the content here. You can tweak the content, right? But the main bulk should be there. I mean, you can add to the content, right? But the content that I gave you needs to be verbatim. Okay. So what's it going to ask you to do? So first of all, it's asked you to play around with the style attribute, like we just did, right? We said that it was not a good idea. It was frowned upon. Well, it has you doing the wrong thing. The first thing asks you to do the wrong thing. Okay. So let's try it out. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to paste it in there. There we go. A3, can we navigate there? Let's see. We should be able to go A3. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so this pretty much looks like it's supposed to, right? Supposed to be perfect. Excellent. So we're going to have a script that's going to parse that content and say, yep, that's good. That's what we had asked for. Again, you can add more stuff, but what we ask you, please put in there. For A3, we asked, okay, so we introduced now the style tag, right? Like I explained earlier, right? That style attributes are frowned upon. Style tag is a little better, right? But not that much better, right? Instead, the very best thing is to have links, right? So you declare your style in a separate file, and then you link it in using link. Let's see, automatic grading. Automatic grading would impact our grades negatively. Just asking because we might experiment in labs as against challenge in Twitter. Yeah, no, we're using it for the labs. The Twitter and the challenge, right? That's a little more open-ended, so there's no way to automate this, right? So, automate that. So we're just using it as a helper, right? To just find things that are broken, right? And if it's broken, we're not going to, blindly just take points off, right? We're going to go in and see what's going on. But if we see somebody that it comes up with 100, right, and it shows that the script says, yeah, everything's there, we're not even going to bother looking at it, right? So if the script says you're good, we're just going to take that. Only if it says that you're missing something, then we're going to closely take a look at it. It says, is it really missing, or maybe there's something wrong with the script, right? Okay. Yeah. So this walks you through starting at the style attribute, then using the style tag, and then finally we realize that the best thing is to have the link, right? And then here we show you how to link it. Okay. Right. Selecting content by style with the selectors. Right. So these guys over here, right on the left side, all this, everything to the left of the curly bracket is referred to as a selector, right? Meaning it allows you to select individual nodes that you want to style, right? So this one is selecting all the allies under UL. This is selecting all the elements whose class is foreground blue. H2, same thing, right? Okay, so yeah, so we're going to be using this technique. Okay. All right. So then the labs walk you through exercises of using ID selectors, class selectors, name selectors, right? So for instance, this one asks you to play around with the ID selector, right? And this allows you to ask you to play around with the class selector, right? And then talks about being able to select things by the structure of the document, right? Using the rules that I mentioned earlier. This one is using spaces. See that if you have two selectors and there's a space, it means that there's a hierarchical relationship, right? That one is inside the other, right? Whereas the arrow establishes an immediate relationship, right? Where spaces say, well, selector 3 is somewhere under selector 1, right? So it could be anywhere in the hierarchy. It could be a leaf, right? And that could be way up here at the root, or vice versa. Whereas the arrow specifies a direct descendancy, right? That selector 3 is immediately a descendant of selector 2. And selector 4 is an immediate descender of selector 3. So there you have it, right? So and just let's illustrate that point, right? You have I guess we can try it out, right? We can say copy and so this would be an A3. Oops. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is using the example where we have a div, whose class is selector 1, then has a child of selector 2, and then selector 2 has a child of selector 3. So what can we do? How can we play this? Then finally there's another one, selector 4, way at the end. See that? All the way in. So here we have a set of rules. Let's take a look at it. Let's copy it. Let's see what it does. Let's move it over to index CSS, go down here and paste it. Right. There we go. There we go. Here's our selector. Document, structure selectors. And basically we're saying that here's selector 1, here's selector 2. And we're saying that selector 1, who has a selector 3 inside, I want a background color red and foreground color white. Selector 1. Well, let me see if I'm not overwriting this. And selector 1 followed by selector 3. Selector 1. Selector 3. Selector 1 followed by selector 3 is background color red. Background color red. Class selector 1. Why is this not working? We have class selector 1, and then follow selector 3. Huh? Why are you not working? Oh, maybe it is working. Let's see. Selector 3. Check out from A2 Jingshan. Check out from A2. What's that, Hardik? What are you saying? Oh, okay. No, there's
just replying to a previous query, Professor.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure why my selector. Whereas this span, where is this? Where are you? It's this one right here. Let me see the rules here. Oh, it says that it's not applying anything. Why are you not applying anything? Let's refresh. Why do I have a syntax error? Index 3, A3 index, A3 index, there it is. A1 and A selector 3. Huh. The whole paragraph is not rendering correctly. Why are you not rendering? Oh, so you're, oh, there it is. Okay. A3 class selector 3. All right, I'm gonna have to debug this, see what's up with that part of it. Right, so let's keep going. Just this reviews the color, foreground colors. This reviews background color, right? Okay. And so it declares several styles, several classes, right, with different colors. Now the colors can be set up like we were doing with names: red, yellow, green, blue, or you can use a hexadecimal value, right? And with the hash in front of it, right? That says that it's a hexadecimal value. Also, the all content that is drawn on the screen, right? Everything like this right here, right? Basically, what the browser does, it identifies the rectangle where it's going to draw that piece of content, right? And it thinks about it in what the space is, in terms of what the space is between me and the rest of the content, the spacing inside the padding, right? The inside padding of what's my box, right? How far am I from my box above and below? Okay, we call that the padding. Whereas the outside space, or how far am I from everything else, we call that the margins. Okay. Also, the the rectangle has an imaginary border, which right now it's non-existent, right? It has the border has been removed. It has no borders, right? But you can override it. We can say that I want a border that is 3 pixels wide, that it's yellow, right, and maybe it's dotted, right? Or you can also configure the rounded corners, right? Instead of being all squared off, you can be rounded. Okay. So for that, let's take a look at that. Here we have several border examples. So for instance, if I paste it here, and then the style sheet. Oh, have I been? Oh, what an idiot. I've been copying and pasting my content in index.css in A2, not in A3. Yeah. Style sheet, so it's A3. Index, sorry, for A3. There we go. And then index, I need to load that up. Scary would have been if it actually worked, right? There we go. And the relationship is style sheet. Perfect. And I'm just going to make this to the side so that we can take a look at the content. All right, so if I refresh, there it is. The border is indeed styled. Okay. So we could just take a look at that example real quick. So what does it do? Well, what it says is that it's declaring a couple of names like I can then go in and apply to the elements, right? Let's look at the source code actually. Okay, so I'm declaring border as a heading, then 2 paragraphs. And notice that the paragraphs, right, has just some text, some very simple text, and I can apply as many classes as I want, each class having its own transformations. Border fat, right, is declaring the width, to be 20, 30, 20, 30, right? So that describes the size of the border starting from 90 degrees and then moving clockwise all the way around, right? So this one applies to the right-hand side. This applies to the top. This applies to the left-hand side. This applies to the bottom half. Okay, bottom border, right? And now for the thin, we're declaring the border width to be 4 pixels, right? Solid, we're declaring the border style to be solid. Dashed, right? And then we can then apply these classes however we please on the actual content, right? We can right, we're applying it to this class. So this paragraph is going to have fat borders, the border is going to be red, and the border is going to be solid. Whereas this one, the border is going to be thin, the color would be blue, right, and it would be dashed. And indeed, right, this is how it renders, right? There it is. So notice that on the side is fatter, on the top and bottom is not as fat, right? And then at the bottom is kind of skinny, right? But it's dotted, right? Okay. Then you're asked to play around with a couple of elements that we can explore: padding and margin. So padding is the space within, right? It's within the borders. So inside the borders, how far am I from my border? That's the padding, right? So first there's margin. How far am I for anybody? Then I have the border, right? That specifies how wide I want, right? And then inside that, I can say, well, I am, this many pixels above right? Or I'm sorry, below the border, right? So how for that, notice that we are declaring a piece of text, right? A box that is going to have padding of 50-50 on either side. So this is padded top. There it is. Padded top left. There it is. Right. I'm going to take that and see how it renders. Okay. Notice that I'm using the same styles that I had earlier: border red, border solid, BG color yellow. Right. So make sure that previous examples work before you come in and apply them. Right. So let's try it out. Let's see how this renders. So I'm going to put it at the top because I'm sick of having to scroll all the way down. There we go. And then I'm going to copy that in the CSS. There we go. You paste that. And let's see if this actually worked. Not that. This one. Let's refresh. There we go. There's padded top, padded bottom, padded right. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So padded top, it's this right here. I have a class that says padded top left. Padded top left. If I go in there, notice if I say control and then click, it navigates to the class that uses that. So the top padding and the left padding are both 50 pixels, right? So notice that top, which it's true, right? Notice that the left and the top. Oh, okay. All right, let's keep going. I refreshed this and I lost my what are the guidelines? Let's see, question. What are the guidelines for naming our tags? Okay, yeah, so for the classes and the naming, I don't believe I asked you any naming convention, but for the Twitter, I believe I do. Let's see, Twitter. Let's see, tab, explore screen, yeah. Ah, there it is. Okay, so the convention for the Twitter part of the assignment for 25 points, all the classes must be prefixed with WD. Okay, WD. For instance, as an example, right? For instance, you have this padded top left is being rendered by this padded top left. See that? If I say 0, I say 0, there's no padding. Everybody good? Yes? Right. If I say 100 and 100, it's a lot of padding. Yes? Good? All right. So what I'm saying here is that a good practice is that these names, the names for these tags, follow a naming convention, right? And the naming convention that I am choosing is that you're going to prepend this with a WD dash. Now, if I do that, I'm going to break my code, right? If I go here, notice if I refresh, notice that the padding is gone because my actual class is not called WD dash padded top left. Instead, it's without WD. So I'm going to go fix that. I'm going to say WD. There it is. So let's see if that worked. There it is. That fixed it. Right. So this naming convention comes from the fact that some classes are going to be borrowed from other libraries or for some other folks. Okay, and they might have their own naming convention. We don't know. But we want to cure ourselves and say, okay, I want to make sure that if he named his class one way and then I called it some other way, I don't want to clash. I don't want to have a name collision, right? So just to make sure, I'm going to use my own names and I'm going to prepend it with something that is meaningful to me, right? WD in this class, it means web developer, right? And but it could be anything as long as you can somehow guarantee that's yours. Okay, let's see a question on the chat. What are they gonna? Should our class names be specific and ID tags be generic? Okay, so we're not going to be using IDs. There's nothing that you can do with IDs that you cannot already do with classes. ID obviously adds an additional burden of making sure that it's unique identifier, but you can still, just by being rigorous, right? Classes can achieve the same thing as ID. So we're going to just stick to classes. All right, let's go. All right, so for the Twitter part, what you're asked to do is to create the following screen. You're going to create the screen called Explore Index, right? So like this, right? You're going to create in Twitter. You create an Explore screen, and you might have already done some of this in the previous assignment. So this would be Explore HTML. Oh, in a directory, sorry. I'm sorry. A directory called Explore. And then in there, you're going to have this to be index, I believe. Index. There we go. And then you're going to have a separate index.css for each one of these. So this will be index, that style sheet. And then in the HTML, you're just going to link to it. Link, a ref, that, and the relationship is that this is a style sheet. Okay. And index is empty right now. But what you're asked to do is to build something that looks like this. Something that looks like a set of tweets. Actually, no, this is something you would find maybe on the right-hand side of your Twitter feed, right? Or under your profile, where you have some of the navigation there of trending and for you and blah, 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 right? So to build a page, you're asked to build a page that looks something like this, right? So this would have an input field at the top. So for instance, I have this is CSS. So this is the Explore. Let's see. Explore. Let's see what this looks like. Explore, okay. And we're supposed to make it look like this, right? We need an input field. Let's look at an input field. So we can create an input field. Input. This is our input. We have a cog here. We have some text search Twitter. So this is supposed to say placeholder search Twitter. Okay. Let's refresh. There it is. What else? Down below, looks like it has this for you, trending, COVID-19, news, sports, and entertainment. Okay. Maybe we can render that as a list. And there's several of these. It says for you. And probably these are hyperlinks. For you, trending. Has COVID-19. So this is COVID-19. You have news, sports. Okay. And if I refresh, it looks something like that. Very good. And then down below, there's several items: Starship, Joe Rogan, blah blah blah. Okay, with some of the text different colors, like white and gray, right? So let's create that. Probably we'll have each individual item separate. So this is div, a division. We're going to do this first one. Trending in science. I might have a heading, maybe an H3 that says trending in science, trending in science. You have then a bigger heading. Maybe this is H1 that says Starship. And then another heading underneath, maybe of the same size, that has text 55.5K, so 55.5K views. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see. And there might be several of these, right? And one of them has an image, right? So the New York Times one has an image. So we can try that. Let's see what that would look like. So you have that. And one of them says the New York Times is a label. The New York Times. And this is CNN's Cuomo conundrum. What is that? Who came up with this? What happened to Cuomo? CNN's Cuomo conundrum. And I guess there's nothing underneath. But then there's an image on the right-hand side, right? So there's an image here, source, and I guess we can go back to the images. Do I have any images? H2, I had a couple images, right? So I'm gonna go up, A2. Then Tesla bot. Let's see, add Tesla bot.jpg. There it is. Let's see, does it render? Okay, so there we go. So we got a couple things. Tesla bot is really big. Will our CSS have to look exactly? Yes, it has to look exactly with that. Well, very, very close. Very close. Maybe not exactly the font, right? So I don't believe I tell you what font it is. Okay, so but let's do a couple things. For instance, let's override the font, right? It looks really, really ugly. So what we could do is in the index here, we can say body. The body, I can change the font family to be, say, Arial Black. Let's see what that does. Okay, notice that this already looks a little prettier. It's not using that Times New Roman, so you can change that. Maybe just Arial. So think it's a little thinner. There we go. Right? That's a nice, better font, which is closer to what we asked for. Right? It's probably not exactly the same. We can also change the background color. We can say background color for the entire body, the entire document. We can say black. If we do that, we can't see anything. But we can maybe put the foreground color to be white. Okay, so we have some the beginnings of what this might look like. Okay. What else? Then the for you and blah 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 blah. Right. We could say that these are the tabs. Right. So the tabs for this one, navigation tabs. You can say class WD nav tabs. Okay, and then style them and say that nav tabs, WD nav tabs, the foreground color, right? It's that kind of bluish, right? But the blue that they want, it's this kind of blue. So the color, I mean, we can choose something that is close. It doesn't have to be exactly, right? Maybe this blue here. It's kind of purplish color, right? And that's the color. Is span a right choice? Sure. Yes, you can, if you want to do individual elements to be a specific color, sure. Span allows you to style individual elements or something that will content that will be part of the inline rendering of the element that is not adding any vertical spacing. So span is very, very useful. Yes, thank you. Also, another note here, all these letters here, A, B, C, D, E, right? Those are not supposed to be end up in the document, right? That is not in the document. So do not add the A, B, C, D. These are only used so that I can reference them here on the left side, A, B, C, D, and tell you what font to use, what color to use. And notice that this color, oh, look at that. It gave us a color, the exact color that we wanted to use here. So instead of using this color, we could say, I want an RGB color, and I can paste here the RGB colors. If I refresh, notice that indeed now it looks like that. Okay. Also, notice that they're underlined, right? So that kind of like changes. One way to do that is that you can change the border, the bottom of the border. So, for instance, you can say the nav tabs, okay, and you want to be able to distinguish an LI that has been selected from an LI that has not been selected. So, for instance, here for you has been selected. So maybe you could say class WD selected, right? And so then you can say in your CSS, you can say, the WD tabs that contain a WD selected, I want to change the border. So the border, you can change the borders in several ways. You can change the border style, the border width, right? The border, whether you want it dotted or dashed or solid, right? And the labs have several examples. I'll walk you through all of them so you can become familiar with all these, right? So the border, I could say that I want it to be solid. I want it to be 4 pixels wide, and I want to use this color. Let's see if that works. Refresh. Okay, notice that it did it only for that one, right? Because it's the only one who has the WD selected. And notice that I can apply it to several. I can say, I've got that one selected, and I got the new selected, which is impossible, right? I should not be able to have 2 tabs selected. But just to show you that the style, right, you can go in and apply the style to anybody who has that class. Now that border, like most things, right? Padding, margins, you can refer to which direction. Are you talking the one above, below, from the left, from the right? Which one are you talking about? Right. So borders are the same way. Borders, here I am selecting all the borders, but you can be more specific. I don't want all the borders. I only want the border at the bottom. Right. So if I refresh, notice that I can specifically highlight that one element. Okay. Okay. So you can also say that the tabs and right, it's being applied to who? Being applied to the UL. Well, I like the LIs maybe not to have those bullets, right? So notice if I hover over it, I can take a look at the styling, and I see that let's see, LI text alignment. Okay, notice it's an indentation of the text, right? Also, there's a diagram down here that tells you, exactly what the margins, the borders, the padding is, right? So I don't know if it's any of these. Background, bullet, blah, 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 blah. I think it's, what is the bullets? Decoration? List, decor. I can't remember now. CSS, list, no bullets. How to remove the bullets, I forget. How to create an unordered list without bullets. There we go, thank you. Oh yeah, list type style, there we go, list type style. Right, you can say, the list, the LIs under that UL, I don't want it to have the style, I don't want it to have bullets. Okay, so let's see what that does. Let's render. Boom, the bullets are gone. Also, the LIs, right? Notice there's some padding there. There's this green space on the left-hand side. See that? Notice that this shows you that there's a padding on the left-hand side of 40 pixels. See that? So we can maybe turn that off too. We can say that the padding is no padding. Okay, no padding. And also maybe I don't want it to render from top to bottom. I want it to render from left to right. Okay. So to do that, CSS horizontal list. Where is it? What is display inline block. There we go. Let's say display inline block. And refresh it. Okay, so now it's being rendered from left to right. See, that's being rendered from left to right. So it's almost there, almost there. So I would suggest that you take a look, and Stack Overflow has tons of these snippets. Feel free to take a look at how you can achieve some of this. I would suggest, right, that this title here. I notice that it takes up the entire width of the screen. Okay, so you might end up with something like this, right, where you have the UL taking up the entire width. You can say width 100%. Where are you? This is the LI. Oh, okay, so it's not. Anyway, what I was going to suggest is that this LI, you might want to put a div inside there, or span, so that you can push some of the margins away, and only the text would be underlined. All right. You might end up with the underline being too wide, and the assignment does suggest that the styling, right, is that only the text is underlined. See that? And also there's a spacing in between. So there's some spacing in between here that does not highlight the bottom. And the way to achieve that is to wrap your text not only under LI, but under a span or maybe a div, where you can push off and add some margins on either side. Okay. For the cog here, this icon over here, right? And for this icon for the search icon, we're going to be using icons next week. So we're not going to have we have not introduced them just yet. So for now, you can use HTML entities. And HTML entities this has a plethora of multiple images or icons, iconography, or fonts, characters that you can use, right? So, for instance, entity for the cog or gear. Let's see, there's a gear. So here's one that you can use, and so you can use these codes, right, to use to. So right now the only text that we've seen so far is the our alphabet characters, but there is thousands and thousands of characters that support all the languages of the world. Okay, plus a plethora of tons of fonts and characters. For some of them are for mathematical symbols, right? There's anyway, and so this one you can use by grabbing the hex code just like that. Just copy the hex code, and then just bring it over to your HTML. Right, so right next to the input field, you can there it is. I just added it there, and if you come back here and you say refresh, there's your gear. See that? Right. So anyway, we're gonna play some more next time we meet, and we'll do some positioning. We'll use some relative stuff, and also being able to render things from left to right using floats, right? So we'll play some more when we come back next week. If you could please take a look at the slides and read through the assignment, so you come already prepared, and then we can continue playing around with this. And I'm going to push this content to the repository, and I'm going to provide the link in Canvas, and feel free to use the source code that I've worked on. It might be a good place to get started. You can take a look at to get some ideas, and yeah, okay. All right, excellent. Any questions? All right, excellent. Thank you, everyone. Good night.